listening to Cowboy Logic with Jason Forby, a message of grace and hope.
Everybody's good? Gosh, I kind of had a nice little thing all planned out, outline and all, and then Elvis kind of messed me up. He talked about that woman where all the religious bunch brought her in there, right? You remember the story? Religious crowd, they brought this woman in there and they throwed her down at the feet of Jesus, and they're trying to trap Jesus, and so Jesus, in the way that Jesus does. I wish we believed God was actually just like Jesus. As here Jesus says, all right, you rascals, whichever one of you is without sin, go ahead and you cast the first stone. And of course, then there was none of them there that could, so except him. He could have cast a stone. He just said, throw the first one. If he'd have thrown the first one, the rest of them could have joined in, right? So he was eligible to throw the stone, but didn't. And then they all saunder off in their stuff, and so then Jesus says this. He asked her, where are those who condemn you? Where are your condemners? And she says, they're all gone. And he says, neither do I condemn you. Neither do I condemn you. He said, neither do I condemn you, go and sin no more. Now, if you grew up where I grew up and you got a big old dose of religion growing up, religion will say, if you don't go sin anymore, then we won't condemn you. That ain't Jesus. Jesus said, if you'll realize that there's no more condemnation for you and you get guilt and shame off your heart, it will be easy for you to have a different identity, and a different identity produces a different life. That's way better. I thought about the guy that was paralyzed. He was paralytic, and his four buddies brought him in, remember, and tore off the roof and let him down. He was paralyzed, right? And so I'm thinking, they're hearing all this stuff about Jesus. He's healing folks. He's doing all these miracles and getting people healed, and they tear the roof off and lower him down in there so he can get close to Jesus, and Jesus sees this guy. Now, he's paralyzed. In my mind, I'm thinking that they're bringing their buddy because they think Jesus could get him unparalyzed, right? That's why they're there, healing. I'm convinced. And Jesus, he says this, son, your sins are forgiven. Like, he didn't come for that. I mean, how much trouble's a paralyzed guy been in anyway? Yeah, he says, son, your sins are forgiven. They didn't come because he needed sins forgiven. They come because they wanted him to be healed and made whole. What'd Jesus know? If I can get guilt and condemnation and sin consciousness off of your heart, it'll be easy for you to rise up and walk home. Condemnation is killing us. It's killing people. It's like keeping our hearts from being in the place where it's like we want to argue about, well, is it the will of God for people to be healed or not? I don't know. We can argue about that till the cows come home. People want it to be whatever way. It's like, it does. You know what? If you just get condemnation and shame and guilt off your heart, you'll get up and take your mat up and walk home healed, not even know if it was. And then there's another one too, right? John 3:16. Remember that one? The most famous one. Whenever John wrote the book of John, there wasn't chapters and verses. You know that, right? It was just a letter, right? And so he wrote John 3:16. It's for God so loved the world, he sent Jesus, that whoever would believe in him would live an alive life instead of a dead life. That's Jason's version. You got it. And then the very next verse, we don't even know it because John 3:16 is so famous. It said, John 3:16, God loved the world so much that he refused to leave it in the place it was. He sent Jesus. Now because Jesus came, we can live an alive life instead of a dead life. The next verse, God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world. You want to live an alive life? The first instruction, get rid of condemnation and guilt. So I don't know. I'm just saying. It's the will of God for us to live life. So we thought religion wants to point out all your faults and tell you how guilty you are and you're a no good, rotten sinner. Come on, Jesus said, all right, whichever you cast the first stone, if not, get out. We're not doing this condemnation deal. We're not doing this guilt and shame deal. Lives are not changed by you feeling guilty enough. Lives are changed by the realization of the goodness of God, that he's full of mercy and that there's no sin on your record. And he says, come on, if you'll get up and get condemnation off your heart, you'll pick up your mat and go home singing. You'll be healed by accident. Your life will look different and you didn't even know how or why or what you even did. Oh, there's plenty of self-help stuff and programs and things to do. I'm all for that. But if you just get your heart free, your life will look different and you don't even know how it happened. You won't even put any effort into it. You just changed. That's funner. If everybody's good, everybody's free, everybody's rid of condemnation. It's not like, well, you go and start living a certain way and then you no longer have any guilt and condemnation. No, just take guilt and condemnation because it's a free gift, and then somehow down the line, eventually, you'll start living different. Be all right. So everybody's good? Nobody in here guilty? Nobody in here's got sin on their record? Clean, forgiven, made whole, love takes no account of a wrong suffered. It's all good. We're all clean. We're all righteousness is a free gift. Congratulations, Jesus gave it to you. Man, that's the gospel. Got it? Okay, now what? Now what? I want to set you up because living a different kind of life, right? John 3:16, my version is, God sent his son Jesus so that we might know something different. We can live an alive life instead of a dead life. Because, right, how many know? When Adam and Eve was in the garden, God said, don't eat from that tree or you'll die. They ate the tree. Did they die? No, they still walking around. But what does that actually mean? You're going to live life with a different consciousness. You're going to actually live a life of death instead of a life of life. I like life of life, don't you? I want a life of life, not a life of death. I've tried both. Trust me, life of life is better. So what is a life of life? That's kind of a tongue twister. What is a live life? Live life like. You're with me, right? You got it? What does that look like? It's like life can look different. It's like this is the gospel, that we get to live life with God now. It's not this thing that we got sold where, okay, go to church your whole life, believe in Jesus, cry once in a while, repeat this magic words, and then you can go to heaven someday. Probably because the devil's going to send you and take you out. Right? No, that's not the gospel. The gospel is you've been put back in your place. Your heart's now free. You're a son of God, no sin on his record. Now heaven has a channel to get back in the earth. That's the original mandate. Not that we would get to heaven, that the heaven would get back to us and that we would live life. Come on, you got it? In the here and now, right? So it's like, how do we live an alive life now? What does it look like? It's like there's victory to be had. There's life to be had. I'm just going to set you up for the next few weeks because I'm already messed up. So I'm setting you up. I'm getting a head start for the next few weeks, all right? Everybody cool? How do we win? How do we live that life? Instead of sitting around sucking our thumb waiting on a trumpet, how do we experience life now? How does life with God happen now? Religion will produce arrogance. Right? Religion, the law, all that. If you're going to live by the law, there's only two options. You keep it and you get pride and arrogant. You break it and you get guilt and shame. Only two options. It's no good. It's no good. Neither one's good. Right? So, but you produce arrogance. If you grew up in the thing and you're in church, you're religious, you ever know real churchy religious people? How arrogant they are? Like, man, that's so that thing, arrogance, is like you got to prop this thing up where you think you're always right. You got to be right all the time, and you're not willing to be wrong. The best thing that ever happened to me, I'm telling you, if you're ever going to get a fresh understanding or revelation of God that you didn't have before, the first thing you have to do is be willing to be wrong. Ooh. That sucks, huh? The first step to learning something new is to say, you know what? I must admit, I don't know everything now. I don't have it all figured out. I could be wrong about some stuff. If you've been religious, oh, you hate that, right? Religion, oh no, we are not wrong about it, right? Fight you, all that. It's like, so the best thing ever, the greatest gift ever. Now, I'm not saying just be dumb and gullible and believe anything anybody says, but I'm saying the first step is to realize and admit that I don't have it all figured out. There are some things that I don't yet know, and I'm even wrong about certain things still yet today. And in that place, God can start to show us stuff and learn new things and grow, right? So to understand that there's a lot that I don't know yet would also be able to admit that, hey, we've made some mistakes. We've handled some things wrong. I feel like you guys are leaving me up here all by myself. Right? Come on, is anybody willing to say, you know what? We haven't always seen victory. We haven't always gotten it right. We've had these seemingly failures, right? Now, ultimately, there's no failure, there's no losing, because it all ends up good in the end anyway, right? But you know what I'm saying? It's like we've not gotten it right all the time. We've made mistakes, and it's like this arrogance of, well, it can't be because we did anything wrong. Must just been the will of God. Well, in that place, you're not going to learn anything. It's like, how do we even talk about the mistakes? Because we've been so full of shame and condemnation and guilt that I just think we ought to be humble enough to say, hey, we've messed it up plenty. Instead of being arrogant and saying it's just whatever the will of God is, couldn't have been our fault. Let's discuss it. Let's look at it. Let's talk about it and see where we made mistakes, not for the purpose of regret and shame and all that, but to learn. Let's learn from our mistakes instead of keeping repeating them. Fair enough? How have we messed up, right? It's like, so I'm just setting up. I'm going to try not to get into it. I'm just setting you up for next week, right? Are you ready? Because I saw this thing where, living life like right in the promised land, right? We hear all these, oh, can't wait to get over yonder. Oh, sweet heaven, can't wait. Why y'all are laughing? Because you know I'm right about it. It's true, ain't it? Cross the river Jordan, right? Can't wait to get over. Oh, what a day it's going to be. That day ain't helping me now. I'm saying, it's like the promised land in the Bible, we always thought it was is heaven someday, right? But the promised land in the Bible is not a representation of heaven. The promised land, living in the promised land, crossing over the Jordan, which religion has said, well, it's going to go crossing the Rainbow Bridge. You're going to go on into paradise, into heaven, right? If the promised land represented heaven, there wouldn't be giants in the land. There wouldn't be cities and territory to take over. There wouldn't be wars. There wouldn't be battles to win. There wouldn't be, right? You see what I'm saying? It's not a representation of heaven. It's a representation of a way of life that we now have access to. It's life in Christ. It's a way of life, living life with God in the here and now. It's not someday yonder. It's now. And I feel for Joshua and Caleb, because it's the same dilemma now. When you talk like this, there'll be 10 that say, oh no. Right? They sent over 12 spies. You remember the story? Send out them. They're going to go spy out the land, right? Send 12 of them. They come back. Joshua and Caleb's 2 of them. They said, oh man, it's good. There's grapes the size of a man's head over there. They had to carry it on 2 men on a pole. The grapes are so big. The cities are, it's sure enough. It is something. Land flowing with milk and honey. Wow, what a place, right? And the 10 said, oh, no. No, we're not able. No, we know God promised, but. Big butt Christians, I call them. They've been around a long time. God said, but, right? So it's 10 out of 12, even then. Probably that now. You start talking about victory and living life, and it's the will of God for you to experience life now, and a live life. And they're like, well, no, now, wait a minute. What about this? What about that? Well, not this, not that, all this. Yeah. We're a bunch of Joshua and Caleb's in here, right? We're gonna go. We're gonna figure out, how do we get over there? How do we win? Do we always win? Maybe not. Have we always win? No. But let's be humble about it and say, you know what? Where'd we mess this deal up? What do we need to learn from this? How can we correct this? How can we not lose the next time and be teachable? Fair enough? It's like the disciples, the guy brought their boy, the guy brought his son, and his son was like tormented, and they devil throw him in the fire and try to drown him and have seizures and all that stuff, remember? And Jesus is up there on the hill with the 3 boys, and the rest of them's down below, and the guy brings his son, and they said, could you guys get my son healed? And they tried, and they tried and didn't get the job done, and now it's a big thing, and Jesus comes down the hill and heals the boy immediately, right? So if we prayed for somebody and they didn't get healed, we'd say, well, I don't know, must not have been the will of God. Come on. Anybody ever prayed for somebody and didn't seem to work? What enters our mind? You know, God works in mysterious ways. It's a mystery. He's sovereign. God forbid it could be that we didn't do something right. What'd the boys do? Jesus comes down the hill, heals the boy immediately. It's like, was it the will of God for the boy to be healed? Had to be. Jesus healed him. Was it the will of God for the boy to be healed? Did he get healed when the boys prayed? Uh-oh. I love what they did, because there they pulled Jesus to the side later and they said, hey, obviously it was the will of God for the boy to be healed, but we didn't get the job done, so what gives? I appreciate that attitude, because Jesus' answer was basically this. Jason's translation, Jason's version, it's because of what you still fail to see. When you get to the place where you see what I see, then you'll do what I do and have the results that I have. Just keep coming, boys. Keep seeing. I'm going to keep teaching you. I'm going to keep growing you. And the things that I do you see their posture of, hey, we didn't get it right. Will you teach us? I like that. So, what does it take to win? It's what I want to know, right? That's the question. What does it take to win? I want to win, don't you? I want to see people win. I want to see people live life. I want to see people make it. I like church, obviously. I like having church, and I'd rather have good church services than bad church services, obviously. But at the end of the day, I'd rather see people's lives affected for the good and for people to make it and for people to get healed. And you know what? What if we had good church services and everybody just goes home to hell? Phooey with that. I want to know. I want to learn from our mistakes. I want to see people make it. I want to see people get healed. I'm convinced it's the will of God for everybody to be blessed, for everybody to live in the promised land, for us to get out of Egypt and get Egypt out of us. We're no longer thinking the way that generationally we were brought up to think this way. Like generationally, they were 400 years in Egypt, slaves. They had no idea that it was even an option for them to not have allergies. New mindset. Go from a slave to, well, it's just small, to, no, not having that. Right? What does it take to win? That's what we're going to discuss. To be continued. Most important thing today, we hear it all the time, but most important thing, you will not be able to experience promised land living. Promised land is a land of miracles, a life of miracles, living a miraculous, powerful, changed kind of life in the power of God. And you will not be able to experience that if you allow condemnation and guilt and shame and self-consciousness and all that to rule in your hearts. Got it? Here's what the 10 said. Oh, it sure is a good place, but we're not able. There's giants over there, and we're like grasshoppers in our own sight and in their sight. What happened? The way they saw themselves kept them from experiencing a way of life that was the will of God for them. You see yourself as an old rotten sinner. I have this conversation all the time. I had it last night. You see yourself as an old rotten sinner. You see yourself as a failure. I'm no good. I'm such a failure. I'm just a sinner. You might as well slap Jesus in the face. Because of what he accomplished, you are no longer a sinner. Child of God with no sin on your record. Shame, guilt, look, all that gone. No longer see yourself as a grasshopper. See yourself as a giant killer. See yourself as curses broken over you. You're no longer living under the curse. You just have access to all of God and all of heaven right here and now. Good? Say, bye-bye shame. Bye-bye guilt. Bye-bye condemnation. Nice knowing you. Not really. I'm free.
Please follow and share this message. And for more information, visit srcowboychurch.com.